Hey everyone, it is Caslow, and 2022 is wrapping up. And before we get into 2023, I wanted to take a look back at all the new games that were released in 2022 that I actually beat, and give them a quick little mini review. I didn't get to much. I probably will get to less next year as the kiddo gets more and more into his toddler phase and needs more and more attention. But we will see how 2023 goes. But without further ado, let's start off with the first release of the year that I picked up. And that was Pokemon Legends Arceus. I've played Pokemon on and off. If you see on my channel, I have a few Nuzlockes. I took a big break in the middle of it, so I never played like Diamond and Pearl, which is what this game is a little bit based on. It goes to the long far past of that region, which in this game is known as Hisui. And the game surprised me because the story, while being really basic, has some moments that like really were a gut punch. But you get thrown back in time to this ancient Hisui where everybody's exploring it for the first time. Pokemon are dangerous in this game. Like, you can go out and if you get aggro from some higher level Pokemon, they can wreck you pretty quickly. And that's you yourself, not your Pokemon, like directly attacking you. Which I think is a really nice little change up on the formula. It makes you feel more a part of the world as opposed to just being this avatar that's going around with your Pokemon. The catching, being able to sneak up on Pokemon and get back attacks for higher capture percentages was kind of interesting. I like changing it up a little bit, but there's still that aspect of being able to battle and knock down your Pokemon until it's weak, or paralyze it, or put it to sleep, and then trying to capture it from the old games that I missed, even though you could still do that a little bit in this. This game was much more focused on you going out and sneaking up on Pokemon. There's a difference with the Pokedex in this one as well, where you don't just capture a Pokemon to fill out its Pokedex entry. You have to capture so many of them. You have to have them use certain moves, reach certain levels, evolve into certain types of Pokemon, all to fill out their Pokedex entry. And so going back in time and getting to see how that first Pokedex was really kind of created using this was really nice, and it forced you to actually use your Pokemon in certain ways and in certain weather to really be able to complete that Pokedex so you can get to shiny hunting later. But other than the capture mechanics, there were some other changes. This is the first one where you got a really big zone to go out and explore. You get the ability to fly, the ability to ride, ability to surf, and really go out and explore this Pokemon world. And they also changed up the battle mechanics a little bit. You've got abilities to make your moves either stronger or faster, depending on the situation, and sometimes that's what you need to be able to take down a really strong Pokemon quickly, or if you need to get a hit in before they do. There was also some changes to the Pokemon leveling formula, with stuff that you could level up individual stats on the Pokemon by using different kinds of items that you could refine. And then, even though I never got to it and I wanted to, there's this end game of being able to go out and really hunt these mass... It was like a mass invasion of Pokemon in one little area, and it upped the shiny rate. But overall, Pokemon Legends Arceus was something that kind of took over my life at the end of February, early March. I had received it as a Valentine's Day present for my wife, and fell in love with it instantly. And it was a game that I was really like interested in, but I talked myself out of. And now I feel like I probably shouldn't have. I should have bought it right when it released. But if you haven't tried it, be sure to give it a chance. I think for all its failings on like a technical level, because there are some Pokemon Company learning steps that are going on in this game, it is thoroughly enjoyable and a great treat to check out what could be the future of the Pokemon formula. Alright, next up, and as we enter March, we have Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. I'll be honest, I partially bought this game for two reasons. One, the meme potential of the game. It's one of those so bad it's good type deliveries from all the characters. Um, and the second was on the storyline itself because it was kind of this what seemed to be like a retelling of Final Fantasy One. It ends up not being that. Um, ends up being kind of like a prequel to an extent. But I had a lot of fun with this. The combat is very. It's not quite Souls-like. It's a little bit less than that, which I think Neo did the same thing where it was almost Souls-like with how difficult it was. I played on normal and enjoyed it a ton. There were some times I really got frustrated, particularly when fighting Tonberries. They are the bane of my existence in that game. But it reminded me a lot of playing Darksiders 3 on the difficulty scale. Where, yeah, you've got to be a little bit methodical, but you can also hack and slash a little bit as well. The job system is great to flesh out in that, even though there are some things that seem a little bit overpowered, like being able to cast Ultima with Sage, can sometimes just destroy enemies. But I really wanted to get around to the DLC, I just never had time to, and so I haven't even purchased it. I just wanted more of this game at the end of the day. And if you haven't given it a shot, even if you're afraid of Souls-like, you can go to an easy difficulty and it's just playing a Final Fantasy hack and slash with a very B-movie, so bad it's good script that kind of goes places at the same time. So that's one I would thoroughly recommend as well. Once again, Final Fantasy Origin Stranger of Paradise. Also in March, but I did not finally finish until deep into the summer, is Triangle Strategy. The newest one from the Octopath/Bravely team, using that HD 2D look to kind of take a look at like the Tactics Ogre / Final Fantasy Tactics genre, that tactical RPG. But this is so much more story than gameplay for this game, though. You will be sitting sometimes for like 40 minutes with this deeply high political fantasy setting story. About alliances and backstabs that sometimes I will say I think there was too much story in this game. I know a lot of people love that, but sometimes I'm just like, I just want to get to the next story beat, dude. Let's just can we go? The battles themselves were a lot of fun. The characters have set classes, although you can level them up and evolve them into higher versions of those same classes. So it differs from Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics in that way, where you would have a class system in that, where people could change jobs or change classes. This one, everybody's stuck to a set one. The other thing that I feel like I'm the only one that said this, but it really, for some reason, was something that stuck with me that I did not like about the game, is there's no time where you're just fighting normal like monsters, wolves, or enemies like that. It's always like human on human army battles, which, don't get me wrong, those are fun, but sometimes I like to run into like a pack of Marlboros in the middle of a swamp that I have to take down, or like run into some goblins that I've got to fight in a forest. And this game doesn't have it. There's maybe one fight where you're fighting non-human enemies, and it's almost like the last battle. But other than that, the story is amazing. The gameplay is great, especially if you like that tactical role-playing style of gameplay. If you haven't checked this out yet, I would encourage you to do so. It was great. You just sometimes got to sit there for 40 minutes and listen to dialogue. What can you do? All right, next up, and I don't have a box for it because I let my brother borrow it recently, is the Live Alive HD 2D remake. I've always kind of known about Live Alive as this like stuck in Japan Super Nintendo RPG. There's like 8 different characters, all with their individual stories with somewhat different gameplay to an extent. You have one storyline where you have no combat at all except for the final boss, and it's kind of like a survival horror game to an extent. You've got one where you're kind of playing detective going around reading people's minds to figure out what you're supposed to do. And you can have a giant mech battle in that one for some reason. You've got storylines where you're set in the ancient past where nobody can actually talk with dialogue, and all you get are like symbols, which surprisingly has the most gameplay of the entire game, it feels like. And like a classical fantasy setting with a knight and trying to save a princess. There were stories that I liked better than others, and maybe sometime I'll go through and rank all those in a separate video. And there's one big storyline at the end that kind of brings everybody together. But it was a ton of fun. The HD 2D look never seems to get old right now. And all of the gameplay I can't think of a time when I didn't enjoy the battle system. Outside of one boss where you literally have to cheese it. I died to it a couple of times before I looked up a guide, and you just have to run up to the boss with one of your characters to make it explode and not kill your entire team. Nothing tells you that's what you're supposed to do, but apparently that's what you're supposed to do. But no, I enjoyed it a ton. I think it's worth a chance if you love that Super Nintendo era. Check it out. It's something everybody I think needs to take a listen to, and the music is probably one of the best soundtracks that's released this year. But yeah, check it out. Alright, only 2 games left, but next up, at the height of the summer, and it took me a while to beat it, not as long as some other people, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3. The first thing I said about this after about 5 to 10 hours in was this was everything I wanted Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to be. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was an okay game, but the gacha mechanics and the storyline seeming a little bit immature at times kind of pushed me off for the most part. It wasn't until like 2/3 of the way through the game when you start seeing some of those connections to the first Xenoblade that really caught me in, like pulled me into Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But Xenoblade Chronicles 3 had me from the very start. And it's really cool because you've got kind of, they're not characters from the first 2 games, but they're inspired by like the races of the first 2 games, and you've got separate sides that are basically fighting each other for control of this planet. And you take control of 3 from each side that come together for some special mission. And it's really cool because you've got battle systems that are unique to each one of those sides. For instance, on one side you've got stuff where abilities charge over time the way they did in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, and the other side has abilities that charge as you hit melee hits, the way it did in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And then the thing that I absolutely loved about this game was that you have 6 characters that you're following the entire game that all are really fun to interact with, and ones that you really start to care about real quickly. I think there's really only one that I could tell. He was not my favorite, that's Tyon. But the other 5 I was invested in, like more than I've been invested in an RPG character in years. The storyline is really heartwarming and heartbreaking to an extent at the same time. Goes a lot of places that I didn't expect it to go thematically, and the music is just outstanding. I still hear myself humming songs from this game, and I haven't played it in like 3 months now. If you haven't played this, this was my game of the year on every imaginable level. If you haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles 3, do it. You don't need to play the first 2 games. They help a lot to understand some of the characters, but check it out. And finally, Star Ocean, The Divine Force. I've loved the Star Ocean series for a while. It's something I didn't really get into, though, until the 4th game. But this idea of like Star Trek meets JRPG just really clicked with me right away as a fan of both fantasy, RPGs, and sci-fi. It's partially why I like low-key love the Phantasy Star series, even though I haven't beat but just like one of the games. It's that blending of sci-fi and traditional JRPG video games. I was surprised we even got another Star Ocean game. I was a little concerned when I saw some of the early trailers just because of how some of the characters looked. and they still look exactly the same when you get to the game, but you start to get accustomed to the very doll-like look some of the characters tend to have. I still think Raymond is not the best designed character. He's the blonde dude up here up top. I think that mullet just doesn't work when you get into the 3D graphics of the game. But this had great gameplay. An addition of a new mechanic where you get this Duma little pod that kind of follows you around, and then you can use it to fly up and fly around the environment to explore. And in battle, you can use it to zoom around the battle to move around quickly, which allowed the game to bring back something from Star Ocean 4 that I loved, which was blind sights, where if you zoom out of the enemy's eyesight at just the right time, you get a damage bonus on the enemy while also catching them off guard. That was something that I thought was really missing in Star Ocean 5. So to see it come back was great. And on top of that, the story was really enjoyable at the same time. It's got some callbacks here and there to the previous Star Ocean games. You're coming to a planet that's suffering an illness. There's dual protagonists. One that's from the backwater planet that doesn't know technology. The other who's from space. The one thing I can complain about this game though, is that there are times when it feels, I don't want to say unfinished because the game is definitely finished and everything's there, but it's like they cut out some scenes here and there that would only serve as transitions. There's sometimes when you'll come out of a cutscene and expect something to happen, for instance, where you're like waiting for somebody for like several days, and like they'll just cut straight through it. There's nothing to like show a passage of time. They just say something at the start that makes you know, okay, I guess all that stuff that happened off screen. Let's just do that. Then there's some that are just unforgivable. There's a late game boss that you're talking to him, and they're a completely human looking character, a general, very stern human character, and you come out of the cutscene, and all of a sudden they're this big monster that you have to fight. With no transition of how they transformed into that. You just have to imagine it in your head. It's something that I think really hurt the game. I think those transition scenes are missing a ton throughout the game, but it was particularly egregious in that late game boss battle. But other than that, I enjoyed the game a ton. The final boss is a little bit of a letdown, just because it's not that difficult. But I want to see more Star Ocean, and I want you to go out and try this because it's not a bad game. It's probably on sale now because a lot of these Square-Enix releases that were a little bit low-key at the end of the year are all going on sale. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. It's a ton of fun. I think the demo's still up on PSN if you want to give it a try. Alright, but that's it for 2022 and all the new games that I beat this year. Looking ahead to 2023, there's several games that I'm wanting to check out. I've got several of them pre-ordered. I don't know how many of them I'm going to actually be able to get to and how many I'll actually be able to beat, but there's Octopath Traveler 2, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy 16, Eiyuden Chronicle, Trails of Revelry, and I'm sure we're probably going to get some surprises on top of that as well. But let me know what you're looking forward to in 2023 and what your favorite game of 2022 was. If you want to see more from me, I put out videos pretty regularly on my channel. A lot of Final Fantasy XIV, a lot of just JRPG stuff in general. Click subscribe, you'll get to see all my videos right in your feed. There's also links in the description below to my social media, to my Twitch channel where I stream on occasion. That's gotten a lot less frequent recently. The baby is really taking up a lot of time. And also links to my Discord channel if you want to be part of the daily community. But with that said, I will see everybody next time. Take care.